Every legend begins the same way. Not with glory. Not with iron and fire. Not with the songs men sing around the mead, hall fire. It begins with nothing. With a boy. Standing alone on a shore still warm from the flames that took everything he loved. His hands are empty. His name means nothing. And the sea in front of him does not care if he survives. This is where a Viking is made. His name was Bjorn. And on the morning this story begins, Bjorn had nothing. No father. No mother. No hearth to return to. Only the cold, and a hunger so deep it had stopped feeling like hunger and started feeling like a second heartbeat. He was not a warrior. He was not yet anything at all. The other boys in the settlement, the ones still alive, wanted nothing to do with him. He was a mouth. A burden. A shadow that ate their food and offered nothing in return. So Bjorn survived the only way the weak ever survive. He watched. He learned. He disappeared when danger came and reappeared when it passed. He scavenged. He stole scraps from the fire before they turned to ash. He slept in doorways and woke before anyone noticed him. He had no sword, no axe, no shield. He had only this, the absolute furious refusal to die. He was 15 when he talked his way onto a longship. Not with promises of great strength. He had none to offer. With promises of silence. Of obedience. Of work without complaint. A Jarl named Ulfric needed a deckhand. Someone to bail water. Carry rope. And stay out of the way. Of the real warriors. Bjorn was small enough to be useful and desperate enough to be trusted. The ship was called Halfstorm. The sea storm. And the moment it left the shore. The moment the water deepened and the land behind him turned gray and small and finally disappeared. Something shifted in Bjorn's chest. Not fear. He knew fear like an old companion. This was different. This was the first faint outline of a life he had not yet imagined. He rowed until his palms bled. He mended sails in cold wind with numb fingers. He watched the warriors around him. Their posture. Their grip. The way they held an oar. And the way they held an axe. And he studied every single one of them like a man studying a language he was determined to learn. The first raid came like a storm with no warning. A monastery on the Frankish coast. Stone walls. Screaming bells. The warriors poured off the ship. Shields up. Axes screaming. Bjorn was not supposed to fight. He was supposed to stay with the ship. He did not stay with the ship. What happened in the next 4 minutes would never fully leave him. The noise was unlike anything he had prepared for. Iron on iron. Men screaming in languages he did not know. The smell of smoke. And something he would only later learn to name as death. A soldier came at him from the left. Big. Armored. Certain of his victory. Bjorn did not have training. He had rage. Years of cold. And hunger. And invisibility. Weaponized into a single, animal moment. When it was over, he was standing. The soldier was not. Ulfric found him afterward. Still standing in the same spot. Staring at nothing. The Jarl looked at the boy for a long moment. And said only this. You'll do. This was only the beginning. The real forging was still to come. 3 years passed on the sea. 3 years of salt water. Hard bread. And cold that never left your bones. 3 years of raids. From Northumbria to the rivers of Francia. And in those 3 years, Bjorn was remade. Not by a master teacher. Not by some ancient warrior with secret knowledge. By repetition. By pain. By watching what worked. And discarding what didn't. His body changed first. The hunger thinness burned away. Replaced by something forged from rope and ore. From hard wood and cold mornings. From doing it all again. Every single day. His first real axe was a gift. From a warrior who no longer needed it. Because Bjorn had pulled him from the water during a storm. When no one else had moved. He was not the best fighter on the ship. But for the first time, he was no longer the worst. And he had learned something. That the strongest men around him never grasped. The battle is won before it begins. By the man who has already decided. He will not stop. What happened next would test everything he had learned. And break men far stronger than him. The Battle of the Fun Coast was a massacre. Ulfric led them into a trap. A Saxon force, 3 times their number. Waiting behind a ridge they had never scouted. 30 men went ashore. 7 came back. Ulfric was not among the 7.
Björn lay in the reeds for 2 days.
An arrow wound in his side.
A silence in his chest.
Where something had been. Not grief, exactly. Something colder than grief. The understanding that the world does not reward loyalty. It does not reward courage.
It does not reward
any of the things the songs say it rewards. It rewards only the man. Still standing. When the smoke clears. He pulled the arrowhead out himself. He sealed the wound with fire. A burning stick, held to his own flesh. Without making a sound.
Then he walked north. Alone. Through Saxon lands. Through winter.
Back to the sea. No one believed he had walked from the fens.
In winter.
With an untreated wound.
He had.
And he would never speak of it. Few warriors ever reached the next level. Fewer still survived what it demanded. By his 27th year, Bjorn led his own crew.
22 men.
A longship he had won in a dispute. That the other man had started. And very quickly regretted.
He named the ship Grolfr. The Grey Wolf.
His reputation had begun to travel faster than he did. Men spoke of the warrior from the Fun Coast. The one who had walked out of Saxon winter.
Alone.
With an arrow wound. And arrived at the sea. As if he had merely taken a long walk in the cold. Warriors sought him out. Not because he was the biggest.
He was not.
Not because he was the loudest. He rarely spoke at all. But because in a world where courage was common. And competence was rare.
Bjorn had both.
His tactics were different now. He had stopped fighting. Like a man trying to prove something. He had started fighting. Like a man who already knew the ending. And was simply moving through the steps.
To get there. Controlled. Cold. Devastating.
But true power was not yet his. And the path to it would cost him more than iron ever could.
There came a point.
He could not name the exact moment. When the fighting became almost unnecessary.
Not because it stopped. Because his reputation had become its own weapon.
Settlements had learned to watch for the Grey Wolf banner.
3 of them
surrendered without a single warrior stepping ashore.
They saw the banner.
They opened the gates. They placed their tribute on the beach.
This disturbed Björn.
More than any battle ever had. Because something had happened. That could not be undone. He had crossed the line.
Between warrior and symbol.
Men were no longer afraid of what he could do.
They were afraid
of what they imagined he could do. And imagination, he was learning, is a far more powerful weapon
than any axe.
He was 31 years old.
5 ships.
110 men. His name, spoken in languages he had never heard.
And he was still not finished.
What came next was the moment that would decide whether he became a Jarl
or a ghost. The siege of Rouen
lasted 11 days. The Frankish defenders had chained the river, flooded the approaches, put 2,000 men on the walls. Every Norse commander who had looked at those walls had turned his fleet around. Bjorn did not turn around. He studied the river for 3 days.
Before he moved, he found it. One single point.
Where the chain met the south bank.
Old iron.
Bolted to crumbling mortar.
Untouched for a decade. On the 4th night. In darkness. In silence.
6 men swam the river. At the moment the eastern gate caught fire.
The chain fell. The Grey Wolf's fleet
came through the gap. Like something unstoppable.
By morning,
the banner of Rouen was gone. Replaced by a grey wolf.
On black cloth.
The chroniclers who wrote about that night did not describe Bjorn as a man. They described him as something sent by the old gods to remind the world that walls only stop those who believe.
They cannot be climbed.
He was 35 years old. He had become something beyond the word warrior.
He had become a force.
But the final level,
level 9,
was not won on a battlefield. It was won in silence.
Jarl Bjorn of the Grey Wolf
held no title granted by any king. He had not inherited land,
or blood right,
or a throne handed down through careful marriage.
He had built it, stone by stone,
battle by battle,
ship by ship,
year by cold year. By the time he sat at the head of that hall, 40 years old, scarred from shoulder to jaw, no man in the Norse world questioned who he was. They had all heard the story. The boy on the burning shore. The deckhand nobody wanted. The warrior who walked out of Saxon winter.
Alone.
The man who took Rouen in 11 days. When others said it could not be done in 11 years. Kings sent him gifts.
To avoid his attention.
Warriors crossed seas.
To fight under his banner. Poets wrote sagas about him.
While he was still alive.
He sat in his hall. Drank his mead. Said very little.
He had nothing left to prove.
He had become the thing
that no sword could cut.
and no wall could stop. He had become a name that outlived him.
9 levels.
1 life. From nothing to legend.
Bjorn did not become great because the world gave him anything.
He became great
Because the world gave him nothing.
and he refused.
To accept that as the final answer.
Every scar told a story. Every battle
Took something with it.
every level cost more than the last.
A warrior is not made in a single great moment.
He is made
In 10,000 small ones.
in the cold,
In the dark. In the moments when no one is watching.
and the easiest choice is to stop. He did not stop. That is all.
That is everything.